Hey there, folks. We are Open by Chance, part of Atomic Candy Productions, and we have gotten a lot of questions about grading. So we're going to do a little bit of a grading tutorial here for you today for those of you who do not know how to grade very well or do not understand it. There are various books that you can use, particularly the Overstreet comic grading book. The problem is, and here is an earlier edition of it. Now, the problem with these books is that when you look at the examples, that's supposed to be a 2 that's in a solid good, but it looks fantastic. The examples that they give you in these books is the best of the worst. Best possible example that would fit into a category of a 2, that being a good. So you look at this, and then you look at an actual book that's graded a 2 that's encapsulated, and they do not look the same, and it's confusing. So we're going to go over the point system here on how grading is actually done and counted. We're going to do it the old school style. I'm David. I used to do grading for NEC, that's New England Comics, back in the early 90s, back before any of these grading guides or anything like that were out, back before people were encapsulating. I used to freelance for them. I did not work for them directly. And I did grading in their stores in Allston and Brookline, Massachusetts. Now, what you're going to want to start with is a smooth, clean surface that's well lit, no sunlight, and no track lighting. That is, those fluorescent lights and the long bulbs. Comics don't like them, especially older stuff. You're going to probably be dealing with Golden and Silver Age books, Bronze Age books, and they are made out of a different material than the comics that are being produced now. They were disposable. Comic books in those days were like modern day magazines. They figured you would read it and throw it away. So they made it out of cheap materials. That's why they are so scarce now. Also, particularly, I like to use white gloves. You do not see too many people who do grading on comics using the glove treatment. Rarely will you see it, but this is an area where I think they're absolutely necessary. They use it for grading coins, they use it for grading paper currency, they use it for grading autographs and antique books, but with comic books, they want to put their grubby hands all over it. Your hands produce a lot of oils, no matter how clean they are, and that oil can cause damage to the paper that you are dealing with, particularly with vintage comic books. So I like to use gloves. Okay, what have you got for me today? Let's see what we got. Don't throw it. What's the matter with you? All right, this is Silver Age Batman number 174. What year is this? 60 what? 1965. 1965 Silver Age Batman number 174. Now, this does not look to me like it is anything that special. This is not a key issue. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at this. Now you see the tape has already been defeated on this. This is very important. See how he's already split the tape? This tape is your worst enemy on these vintage books. Whenever you see a vintage comic that has like shredding on the cover, it's because someone pulled it out of a poly bag like this and it caught on the cover. Tape is your worst enemy. Remove or fold that tape before you even get started. Now I'm going to get my gloves. Okay, removal. I'm going to push that cardboard on the bottom just a little bit. Not the bottom of the comic, but the cardboard that is showing on the bottom, because it has a backing board. That way I can grab it on this end and slide it out without touching that comic. See, I want to touch it as little or as lightly as possible. Now I've got the bag off. I know there's a little bit of reflection here from the overhead light, but we'll do what we can. I like using the backing boards to sort through this, and as a matter of fact, I'm going to use a different one to flip it over so that I can keep it as flat as possible. It already has some rolling. I don't need to make it any worse. And that back cover has some good color. But what we really need to do is very carefully go through the interior of this book very quickly. So I'm going to slide my hand under here without bending it and give it a little bit of a roll. And you're going to have to be a lot more careful with that. Doing that right there, how I've got a slight curve to it, with modern books. Because with modern books, that's where you're going to get these creases at the staples when you open it to look through it. Very carefully here, I'm not pinching it, just guiding it open. I want to take a look at the pages. So I'm going to flip through this very carefully, and there's some slight yellowing. That's to be expected with a book of this age. But what I'm making sure of is that there's consistency in the overall color of the whiteness, and also making sure that none of the ads have been clipped out. Look at that vintage G.I. Joe ad. Love the old Joes. Now you see there, I left that open here for a second just to show you the overall consistency of the color. See how the whiteness is bordered and it's even all the way around? That's important. Now the reason, notice as once again I do not flip the book. I do not sit there and flip the book like a phone book. Now the reason I'm so meticulous about checking this, particularly for the ads, is, once upon a time I had at New England Comics, they gave me a copy of Incredible Hulk number 181 to look at, and they had deemed this book to be like a 9 condition, and it looked really clean from the outside. Now that of course is the first full appearance of Wolverine, and I said, okay, let me I'll double check the book for you, no problem. So I went through the book page by page like I'm doing right now. You see I'm trying to be very careful, and found that a whole half a page ad had been clipped out of the bottom. It was like, and towards the back there was a section like this big that had been just completely cut out, which murdered the value of the book. But their expert had missed it because he flipped through it, which you shouldn't do with a book that mint anyway, instead of actually taking the time to look at the pages and make sure everything is there. And this book is intact and has good coloration on the pages. Now let's get this flipped back over. Okay, so basically how is this done? If you can count, you can grade. I'm just going to go around the cover very carefully, and I'm going to count the damage. Blunted corners, 1, 2. A very small split, 3. Very small split here, 4. An abrasion, 5. Another small split, 6. A dented corner, 7. Let me move this up here. Abrasion along the bottom edge, 8. Some rolling and cracking along the spine, 9 and 10. Staples are fully intact and in place and holding the book very tightly. So we're up to 10. Let's flip the book over. Looking on the back cover, another small split, 11. And a little bit of cracking here, and we'll call that 12. And the back cover is fairly clean, as you can see. So I've got 12 points of noticeable damage, plus the slight yellowing of the paper on the inside. It call it 13. So I've got 13 points of damage. Now we go to the scale. Now, according to the scale, for this book to qualify as a fine minus or a 5.5 condition, it would have between 7 to 13 points of recognizable damage. And that puts this right on the high end of a solid fine minus or 5.5 book. Let's turn this back over. Okay, so at a 5.5 or a solid fine minus, according to Overstreet and according to comicsprice.com, of which Atomic Candy is a part of, you can find Atomic Candy on comicsprice.com if you search them. That would put the value of this at about $33. $33 ungraded. Graded condition, about 60 to 65. So it's up to you if you wanted to bother to get this graded and encapsulated. But keep in mind, since it is not a key issue, that is a key issue being there's a certain first appearance or something very significant happens in this book, which it does not. I mean, it's a fun book, but it's not a significant book. Therefore, you would not likely get the full graded value out of it. At graded value being between 60 and 65, you might get 45 or 50 if you sold it after it's been encapsulated. Is it worth it to spend like 25 bucks or whatever to get this encapsulated so that you can squeeze an extra $10 to $15 out of it when you sold it? You could think about restoring it, but there's really not very much to restore here. The slight rolling could be pressed out and you might gain about a half a value and make it a solid fine at about a 6. How much more would it be worth? Not that much. For myself, I really wouldn't bother to get this graded and encapsulated, and I probably would not bother to get it pressed or serviced. I would just leave it as is. You could probably still get about 30 bucks for it. Well, I hope that this has been helpful to some of you who are just getting into the idea of grading. I will let you know that CGC and PGX and other grading companies, they can't grade any better or worse than the layman grader who does this kind of thing at home. The only difference is, one, they can probably do it a lot faster. They can do it faster than I just did. I'm very meticulous with it, though I try to be, because they do it all day long. It's all they do. So they can go through this a lot quicker. But I also think that sometimes that makes them a little bit more sloppy. And secondly, they have a certificate that says they know how to grade. And that's pretty much it. But I hope that has helped some of you to understand about grading a little bit better if you are new to this. We'll do a few more grading tutorial books where basically Eric will throw a book at me and then I will do a real quick assessment, and hopefully that'll help some of you learn about the hobby a little bit better. Please like, share, and subscribe. And thanks for watching. We hope to see you again.